There's look, okay. How are we all doing, youth? Nice and shy. That's okay. For the future reference, it's better if we sit closer. It gives the preacher less work to do, because now I need to look in the back. It's yeah. So, before I start my sermon, I feel like I have to say something about the coronavirus, right? Every single person that preaches feels like they have to say something. So, I heard one thing previously that a positive of the coronavirus was, especially for us young people, it shows us that life isn't going to be super easy. There's going to be some bumps, some bruises in the road. But another thing that's specifically more towards, I guess, Christianity is something that we should look forward to is God typically works best or most during difficult times, during interesting times. If you look at examples in the Bible, the Israelites were in slavery. That's pretty tough. That was really hard, and that's when God did a lot of miracles and he took them out. And just random history, right? And during communism, God really worked in the church and in the Soviet Union probably because people realized they can't rely on themselves. It's I can't do anything myself, so then I'm going to rely on God, and then God could actually work now that I'm not relying on myself. So then the question is on us is, I know that God is going to work. The question is he going to work through us? And if we want God to work through us, because that's actually a question that we probably don't even realize that we should ask ourselves, because it requires sacrifice from our end. But today I'm going to talk about a parable. And before I even say what the parable is, I want you guys to not automatically what Eddie said, oh, we already know what he's going to talk about, because this is a parable that we learned when we were 6 years old in Sunday school. And so if you hear it, if you hear what it is, you might automatically turn off and think, okay, I already know what he's going to talk about. But that's a really dangerous thing to do. Because if you think that you already know everything, why did you come? Are you going to learn? Are you here to learn, or are you here just to sit? And before I talk about the parable, I wonder if you guys have ever thought about why Jesus taught in parables. There's the one reason, right, that it says in the Bible specifically, his disciples asked him, they said, why do you teach the people in parables? And what did Jesus say? Do you guys remember? Yeah, he said the people, if I told them straight up, I'm going to say my own words. If I told the people straight up how it is, they're not going to hear me. They're just going to it's going to be white noise for them. But if I tell them in a parable about everyday life, they're going to understand better. And that's why when they did hear it, it was like a breath of fresh air for them. They awoke. They could sit there for hours and just listen to him preach. They came there to get healing as well, but not everyone came for healing. Some people came just to hear. They could sit at his feet at the mountain, for example, and just sit for hours and just listen. Why? Because it was alive. He spoke with authority. And so for us, there are also some benefits to parables that I think we could use in our lives. A parable creates a nicer picture. Instead of me just telling you for example, God is your leader, follow him. If I say God is your shepherd, right, as a metaphor is in the Bible, if I say God is your shepherd and you are the sheep, what can you do now? You can imagine the sheep and you can imagine the shepherd. You can imagine the sheep following the shepherd. You could imagine the shepherd, how much he cares for the sheep, that he went out there specifically just to take care of the sheep. And so parables allow us to use our imagination to explore it and then to really learn and to ask questions. Because if you ask the question of what happens if a sheep leaves? What is a shepherd going to do? All these questions, you discover new things. So if you stay at the basic Sunday school 6-year-old level of parables, you're really not going to learn anything. So today we're going to explore a parable a bit more, and I'm going to ask you to give it a chance and not close your mind right away. So we're going to open up Matthew chapter 7, verses 24 through 27. It's the parable of the house on the rock and a house on the sand. So it's written, therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house. And it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. But whoever hears these sayings of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. So what do you typically think when you read this? When someone says it, what do you think? It's like the person who built on the rock is a Christian. So the person who didn't build on the rock is not a Christian. Automatically, and so what do? You automatically put yourself into the side of the person who built on the rock. You put yourself on the Christian side, and so you essentially put away the story because I passed the test. I'm a Christian, I'm building on the rock. But if it was really that simple, I don't think it would be, Jesus would leave it in the Bible for us. Because, we're supposed to keep coming back to the Bible and learning new things each time. So, I want to ask, so this story is about foundations, right? One of the foundations was a rock, one was a sand. What's the point of a foundation? You could answer me. Support a structure, built a house, right? What else? I know, someone says this is weird that I do this, but I just can't help not asking questions and waiting for awkwardness from the crowd. No? Okay, that's fine. No, so you're right. It is, the point of a foundation is to uphold the structure that is going to be built on the foundation. So if you think about it in the metaphorically, right? A foundation is basically the tenet, the basis, your principle upon which something else stands or is supported. So not just the building. So everything else that comes after the foundation is put into place. So if the foundation comes first and then everything comes after. So for you, for humans, it's what's at the core. What do you live for? What do you get up for? Why do you go to work? Why do you go to school? Why do you put up with things? What is it that if you took it away from you, if you removed it, your life would fall apart? Everything else that you built is just going to crush and fall apart. Okay? That's just for us to think about. And so then I'm going to move on, but I want us to right away put the question into our mind is what is my foundation in my life? And don't automatically answer Jesus, okay? Just really actually think about it and be honest with yourself. What is in my life that if you took it away, it would feel like my life is falling apart? And it could be a combination of things. We're going to go through a couple of them soon. But what is it that really I care most about? And again, don't answer Jesus right away to yourself because you're just going to not actually test yourself. Okay? You're not going to tell anyone else the answer except you. So be honest with yourself. And so we're going to go through each one individually first. So the person that builds on the sand, my question is, why would someone build on sand? Cozy? What else? Easy? The rock is also by the ocean, by the way. What else? The view? Guys, the rock is right underneath the sand. But okay. So what I thought was, because you can't just automatically, part of you thinks that person is dumb, but who would actually put in the work of building a house on sand, knowing, because everyone knows that it's going to fall apart. So there must be something else. Part of it could be laziness, convenience. You don't need to dig through the sand. You don't need to get to the rock. It's much, much easier. That might be a reason. It's quicker, right? You just skip a step. You skip the step of digging. You just automatically start building up. But what if you think the sand is strong enough? What if you get to the point, because like in the beach, there's like the soft sand, and then there's like wet sand, and it's like compacted, and you think it's strong enough to build on. What if that's what it is? And so you deceive yourself. You kind of think, this is strong enough, now I'm going to go up. I'm going to build. This is a pretty strong foundation. I feel secure. And then you go up. What if you didn't search for the rock? What if you didn't know it was there? What if you didn't want to search for it? Or what if you underestimated the power of the storms? What if you underestimated the power of the flood, the possibility of the tide coming in? What if you thought, I'm going to build strong enough, nothing's really going to withstand? And so I'm going to move on. Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 12 kind of continues this metaphor. Because Christ here, he talked about how it's foundation. And then Paul says, now if anyone builds on this foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw. So he's saying the foundation is built already. And then you decide how you want to build. You decide if you want to use good materials, wood is a bad material, sorry. Bad materials are wood, hay, straw. Essentially, in this case, we usually build out of wood, so we think it's good, but if you compare it to gold, silver, precious stones, it's a pretty bad material. So then you decide. And this is where it got much clearer and deeper for me, because I realized that you make two decisions. You don't only make the decision about the foundation, you then make the decision on top about what kind of building you're going to build on that foundation. And so what happens if you choose a bad foundation and bad materials? What does that look like? So you choose sand. And I know I'm talking a lot in metaphors right now. I'm going to make it a bit more clear soon. Don't worry. You choose sand, and then you choose hay, straw, and wood to build on top of it. Spiritually speaking, what does this look like? This looks like someone who doesn't really care, right? Because if the metaphor goes, your soul is kind of in there. It's not your flesh, because that doesn't work. Your soul is in there, so you don't really care about it. Not only did you pick the bad foundation, you kind of just build out of whatever, because really you're in the fight between your flesh and your spirit. The flesh is always winning. You're kind of neglecting your spirit. You're letting it loose. So then to crush your foundation, to crush your spirit, to crush your soul, it's going to take very little. To crush it, it's going to be very, very small. A wind could like move hay, straw, rain will pour through it. And so from the side, someone else looking at you could kind of tell, because the part that's visible is the hay, straw, the building. They could tell how you're being built, so they might even let you know. They might let you know, hey, is everything okay? Like, how is your spiritual life going on? But you don't really care. You're kind of just focused way, way more on the spirit, on your flesh, because you're letting it your win. But the one positive about this side, the one positive about building with a bad foundation and a bad, building, bad material is it's much easier for God to wake you up, I think. Because it's easier to destroy your whole structure and for you to actually wake up and acknowledge that, you know what, I'm not taking care of my soul at all. I'm not taking care of my spirit. I'm allowing my flesh to win. But what happens if you choose a bad foundation, but you build with good materials? And what does that look like? This is the part where we could trick ourselves very easily. Because we choose a foundation, perhaps not even knowingly. It's just subconscious or kind of the decisions we make. But then the part that we see is what we build. So if you're trying to be a Christian, you're trying to do all these good things, and it looks like you are, right? It looks like you are. You're trying to love people. You're trying to do all these other things, but your foundation in the beginning, so your whole reason for it was wrong. And you might be confused and saying, how is that possible? Well, let me bring up an example. What if your foundation is success? So what you wake up for every morning is, I want to be successful, and part of that is being a successful Christian. But you're just worried about the results. You're worried about success itself, and you're not worried about setting the foundation as Jesus Christ. So then, results, you see the results and you're okay with it because you know that you're successful. Like you're in church, you're doing things, that means I'm a Christian. That means I'm good. I'm successful. And you're also focused on other things, obviously, because your whole point is to be successful. So you go to school, you get a job, you do all these other things. What if it's happiness? You know that if you are Christian, you're going to be more happy. So then you decide that I'm going to be a Christian so I could be more happy. And you kind of forget about that initial reason for following Christ, but it was the wrong reason. Okay, and this is a really dangerous, very, very dangerous thing for us, especially for those who have been raised in Christian families, because we could easily go through life without having this moment of awakening, of like an awakening of our spirit, of realizing the difference between being with Christ and without Christ. Because it's like, using the metaphor, it's like our parents have told us that the rock, if the rock is Jesus, they're saying the rock is underneath the sand, and they described it to you because they can't actually put you on there because each person has to do that himself. They said, if you build on the rock, you're going to be strong, you're going to be with God, right? And they described it to you. They said what it's going to look like. They said how much you need to work to get to it. But you didn't do it. You didn't get there because you got to a point where you feel like it's hard. You feel like the foundation underneath you is hard enough, and you're like, that must be Christ. So then you don't really read the Bible much anymore. This is what you did when you were younger. You've learned the basic parts, really. Like you could kind of just go live life, and you think you're fine. But it's scary because if we read just above those 3 verses that we read, verse 21 through 23, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. That's a very scary thing. None of us are even at that point where we're casting out demons, where we're doing prophesying, doing all these things. If I was at that point, I probably wouldn't even question what my foundation was. I probably wouldn't even question if I'm right with Jesus. Of course I'm right with Jesus. Look at my building. Look how strong it is. Look what I'm doing. Of course I'm right with Jesus. And so then again, the dangerous part about this is no one else can even tell you. No one else could help you out. If you're building with bad materials, at least someone who really cares about you, a friend, could knock hard enough, maybe wake you up, maybe tell you. But if you really don't care, you don't care. But if you're building with good materials, but you're not worried about the foundation, who's going to tell you? Only you know what your foundation is. Only you know why you're doing what you're doing, what your whole point of life is. And so, what's the question we should all have at this point? What does it mean to build a foundation on Jesus Christ? Using the sort of criteria I pointed out earlier about what it means for something to be a foundation, He is your whole principle. He is your whole point for waking up in the morning. He is your whole point for working. He is your whole point for going to school. That verse about God being praised through everything you do now makes much more sense. At the core of who you are is Jesus. Why you do the things you do. And again, the process of laying it down on the foundation, it begins with the conscious decision. So you need to decide, I need to decide today that I want Jesus to be my foundation for real. Because if I don't set him as my foundation, my building, my soul is going to perish. There's a chance that I come to the gates and God will say, he never knew me. And the whole time I could have went through life and I was just like, I thought I was good. But God could talk to me, look at me and say, I never knew you. You never knew me. And that's something we should be like, that should wake us up. That should terrify us. So we need to put ourselves on the scales. And in this, Matthew didn't write about how you have to dig to get to the foundation, but Luke writes about how you need to dig through sand to get to the rock. So what that means is we need to dig through the Word. We need to choose. First, we need to make the conscious decision, and then we need to go into the Word and try to find out who Jesus is. Jesus, we can't rely on what, like, we know previously. We can't rely on qualities we read about from other people, what the preacher says. We need to find it ourselves. And a few characters of a rock that would also apply to Jesus. That rock is guaranteed to be there, so Jesus will definitely be there. If you dig, you will find him for sure. And the entire thing needs to be uncovered. Because if you just uncover a tiny part of the rock, and then you try to build, the rest of your building isn't built on the rock. The rest of your building is built on the sand. And so you really didn't build on the rock. You just built on the sand. But because you discovered that one part of the rock, and now you think, I'm okay because I found Jesus, I found this part of the rock. You're good, but you're not, because you're building on the rest of the sand. So you need to keep uncovering. It's a life process. We're going to do it our entire lives. There's no point where you stop and you're like, I'm done. I've discovered, I completely know Jesus. We are one. I have nothing new to learn from him. Another thing is, it's already in the shape that it needs to be. The rock is already in the shape that the foundation is best for your building. So what this means is it's not open to, who Jesus is not open to your interpretation, my interpretation. It's like, I'm going to pick and choose what looks good for me. That's what I'm going to choose. It's already there. Jesus is one. We should all be discovering the same Jesus, but somehow, if something else is truly your foundation, then Jesus will be different. It's going to be, you're going to nitpick and pick the pieces of Jesus that you want, but then really you're not building on Jesus in that case. I hope this message was honestly pointless, and I hope that we actually all are building on Jesus. But I don't think that's the case. But if you are, God bless you and keep going. I don't want this to be like a crushing thing, but I want us to really honestly put ourselves on the scales and see, what is my foundation in life? Like, why do I do what I do? Because we're in a period in our lives, youth, right? You come in there are some fresh teenagers here. You come in kind of not knowing much. You kind of just still dependent on your parents a bit. You walk out of youth starting a family already. So this period of youth is the process of growing up, right? The process of becoming a man, becoming a woman, whatever, right? So when you exit youth, we need to be at a point where we're stable, because someone else is going to be relying on us, our spouse, and then when we have kids, your kids are going to be relying on you. And so if we keep putting off this decision of what we want to build, of really digging into Christ and trying to find Christ, it's going to be much, much harder later. If we think we're busy right now with school work, we're not. You're still going to have work when you're married. You're still going to have work when you're going to have to come home and raise kids. So then you're going to have less time. We're going to have less time when we're later to dig in the Word. That's just period facts. Unless you're planning on being a bad parent, which I hope is not the case. But if you're planning on being a good parent, you're going to spend time with your kids. Spend time with your spouse. And so this period of youth is a golden age for us. It's a golden age. Especially right now people say all the time with the coronavirus, if you're working from home, you could dig through the Bible. You're going to be at school is going to be from home, you could dig through the Bible. So it's a message that I realized to myself, because it's like, you think you're fine, but what if you're not? What if you're not? And I don't want us to put this decision off because for some reason, we think we're losing something. We're holding on to something for dear life, and because we don't really trust that Jesus wants what's best for us, like truly what's best for us. We don't trust Jesus with all of our lives. We think do we believe that Jesus is good, If he's good and you attach yourself to him, if you get to know him, only good things will come. Only good things will come. But you might have to let go of some things in your life that you might not like at this point, that you really like at this point. But if it's going to be so much easier to let it go once we experience Jesus' love for real. Because in the Bible it says, taste my goodness, right? Jesus says, come and taste my goodness. my grace, if we truly taste his love, those things won't matter to us anymore. And I even if you're not really like feeling like I need to examine, I need to, dig into the word right now, I at least ask you to make the conscious decision in your mind that I have to do this. Your emotions might not be pointing towards that right now. You might not have that desire to do it. But if you put it in your mind at least, you will start to read his word, and you will get the desire once you feel his love, and then you're going to want to keep going. And it's going to be the cycle that's going to be great because you're going to want more of it. It's a never-ending love. And so I would, like us to go to prayer now. I know this has been kind of long. And let's just be honest with Christ. I asked this what our foundation is. I want us to talk to Jesus about really what's inside. If you don't want to, if you don't want to build on Jesus currently because you feel like you might be losing something, at least tell him that. Why lie? There's literally no point. Why lie to yourself? Why lie to Jesus? Amen? Let's pray.
Gott, bitte individualisiert.